Hello, this is going to be the second video on kind of historic information behind some of the areas in the township for those of you who haven't lived here a long time. If you didn't know this ORV Park here, which also wraps around Mount Holly in the back, is about 235 acres. And this is a site of at least 3 attempts to put a landfill here in Groveland Township. The 4th one was over on the township's property a little farther south of here. But the 3 attempts here are because when people want to put a landfill in, they actually look for places like old mining pits. The people that make landfills are not really buying acreage, they're buying airspace. So when you have a piece of property this big, there's 235 acres here, and it's a big hole in the ground, you basically can fit twice the amount of trash in it than you can if it was a flat piece of land. That's why, unfortunately, they're very tempting sites for people to put landfills. And you might wonder, why do we allow a gravel pit here anyway? There's tons of state law that says you cannot tell somebody they cannot get the mineral resources out of their property. And since you have to kind of go where God put the gravel millions of years ago when the glacial moraine went through here, they end up getting permission to do them. So what the townships do generally is a negotiated solution with a consent decree, where we try and limit the hours of operation, have annual reviews of what's being done, make them post bonds for reclamation that isn't completed yet. Now, this particular site was a gravel pit. At one point in time, the township, I had put together a group of 2 or 3 of the pit owners along with the township to see if we could get economic development on all of our pits to get them out of that constant loop of people looking for landfills. But the economy tanked around 2009 and 10, and that kind of killed that whole idea. Subsequently, what happened is the Oakland County wanted to do an ORV park. They were going to try and put it in Oxford first, but I don't think they really did a good job of approaching the township in Oxford on how they wanted to do it, and they got shot down right out of the gate. When they came here, I told the Department of Natural Resources that what we would do is I wanted them to buy not only the Stoller Rock pit here that's behind me, but also the Leone pit that's wrapped around the backside of Mount Holly, because I did not want to end up with an ORV park here and a landfill behind Mount Holly on top of it. And they kept their word. They bought both of them. We put the park in, and I can say there were some acclimation bumps the first year where they were learning a little bit about how to run the park. But really, we haven't had a complaint on this park in a couple of years now. It's worked out very well. And as you know, it's not open every day. It's usually on the weekends, and in the winter, I'm not even sure if they're opening it all the time. They frequently rent this park to companies that want to use it for testing and development, shooting commercials like Ram trucks and Broncos when they came out were shot here. And so that's how this park got here. It was an effort and a joint venture really between our efforts here at the township to get the landfill equations that kept on coming up here out of the picture by putting it into some permanent use. And so what we're going to do next is go to a piece of property that's just down on the other side of Mount Holly that was originally a part of the Stoller Rock piece, because that has also got an interesting develop on it, a small tech park on Big Sky Drive. Okay, here's the second part of the development. This industrial tech park that was built on Big Sky Drive off of Dixie actually butts up to the Leone property, which is the last part of the ORV park. So beyond the trees over there in the berm is the remainder of the 235 acres that makes up the ORV park we were just showing you from the other site. This was also part of Steve Stollerock's property, and if memory serves me right, at one point in time when I first moved out here, he had an asphalt plant here, and there were a bunch of barrels for the diesel fuel to run the stuff, and some kids came in one night, punched holes in all of it, and contaminated a whole bunch of the land here. And I think it was about $200,000 to clean up the contaminated soil and get rid of it. He subsequently ended up finally building this little industrial park, which I think is a nice addition to the community and gives us a little bit of business base. And Steve also owned a little bit of property on the other side of Holdridge Road here, which he subsequently sold to some people, I think, who made a few houses back there. All of this land, as you can see, was originally tied up in the mining operations. And so now when you get it developed like this, it takes it out of the equation for ever being used for a landfill. And that's why we supported the idea of putting the tech park in and worked so closely with the state to get it done the right way. If you didn't know this, the ORV park is actually owned by the state of Michigan. The state of Michigan owns over 8,000 acres in Groveland Township, about a quarter of the township. and it's operated by Oakland County Parks and Recreation under a contract. It was, I think, the first or second park that the state of Michigan decided to say, we want to have parks for the people in Michigan, but we really don't want to manage them. We want to start using the local county parks people to manage them going forward. So that's how this property was used originally. And if you didn't know it, there was a asphalt plant, had some spills, got cleaned up, ultimately got developed as this park. The last piece of the property that Stoller Rock owned in this general area was on the other side of Holdridge. Those got sold for a couple of homes. And the park property in the back here on the other side of that berm is the old Leone pit, which is just about done and provides the rest of the 235 acres to the ORV Park. And then you saw the original park, the bulk of it, on Stoller Rock's property when we first stopped. So that's a little bit of a history for you on the property out here and some of the efforts at making landfills and how we ended up ultimately putting an end to them and stopping them from recurring.